The drama series Vikings tells the story of one man's meteoric rise from simple farmer to Viking king. Inspired by both legend and history, the show portrays the brutality and the humanity of the Vikings. But where does myth end and fact begin? This series is a journey of discovery across 8 countries, with the world's top Viking experts and members of the Vikings cast to reveal who the Vikings really were. In this episode,
The gods will always smile on brave women.
Oh, yeah. This is Ragnar's favorite weapon.
women who wield weapons and women who wield power.
She became like a male in her role. She was in charge. Right. She was the one who everybody relied on.
Sex and sorcery.
No. Sex could be included in some of the rituals.
And the surprising secret
Sailing across the sea to England.
to Viking success. Today, we picture Vikings as a warmongering society dominated by men. But Michael Hurst, writer and creator of the drama series Vikings, wanted to challenge that stereotype.
I certainly spend as much time working on the female characters as I do the male characters. And I just like writing about relationships between men and women. It's endlessly fascinating.
Michael's approach is echoed by researchers all over the Viking world. A cutting-edge movement of experts turning long-standing assumptions about the roles of Viking women on their heads. Among them is archaeologist Charlotte Hedenstejerne Janssen.
There is an ongoing and very heated debate on the existence of warrior women in the Viking Age. And this is a question. Were there professional female warriors?
Ira, is your mother teaching you how to use a shield?
Yes, I know how to use a shield.
Your mother was a famous shield maiden.
Was?
Is a famous shield maiden.
Like, there had to be a shield maiden. You know, I mean, someone said to me, there is no other character like her on American TV. She's a mother, she's a wife, and she kicks ass.
Shield maidens appear in historic poems and stories about the Vikings called sagas. But many researchers question their credibility because they were written down centuries after the Viking era.
When we read them today, we say that's legend, it's mythology. Why is that the first thing that we say? Sagas tend to be modeled on a kernel of truth.
Charlotte believes that shield maidens were real. She wants to find out how plausible it was for women to engage in Viking warfare.
Nils.
Hey, so Nils, in a battle situation, I mean, it's a very stressed situation, an extreme situation. How would a woman compensate on the battlefield?
To compensate, you have to be skilled. Let's us show some techniques. Louise will be the shield maiden, I will be the opponent. So we can take some equipment here. The first thing I would like to do, being big and strong, is going in and separate her sword and shield from each other. And I'm going in, first step, to control her sword. Push it away with my shield, and here, cut her. This is perfect for me, being big and strong. But she has been trained to counter this. So when I go in, here, she twists the sword. She turns it around, gets me on the outside, and stabs me in the neck. She compensates my strength with skill.
Viking Age warfare was a performance of a deadly ballet that was very much rehearsed. And actually, some of the tactics and the skills are really based on being agile and quick, and
Yes.
so the woman would at least not have a disadvantage. She would be on the same terms as her fighting comrades.
So it is feasible that women fought alongside Viking men. But is there any physical evidence? Actress Catherine Winnick wants to find out.
Playing Lagertha, people thought it was such a unique character. Here she is, a mother and a wife, but also a warrior. One of the questions the journalists always ask me, do shield maidens really exist?
Catherine has come to the Swedish History Museum in Stockholm with archaeologist Neil Price, where she hopes to answer this question once and for all.
Hi, Charlotte, thank you for sitting down with me. I'm excited.
This is from one particular site, and these are all from the late Viking Age, really, from the 10th century.
These deadly weapons were found at the Viking fortified town of Birka in 1878, carefully arranged around a body in a single grave. Charlotte is the foremost expert on the site today.
And this is a perfect image, I think, of what we expect to find in a Viking warrior grave.
Okay.
It's by the gates of the fortress, and when you'd have walked along the road to get into the fortress gates, you'd have passed by this grave.
This, of course, I already know. This is my sword. I say my because I just want to pick it up and use it.
You have to balance it.
Blade.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah. This is Lagertha's favorite weapon. They gave me a choice when I first started the show. They said axe, spear, or sword. And I said definitely a sword. And there's something about picking up a sword that you just feel
Yes, empowered.
powered. So what do we have over here?
That would be the battle knife. And battle knives are an excellent close combat weapon, and it's actually quite heavy.
Oh, I think Lagertha found her new weapon.
Yes.
I like this. Wow.
As you see, it's quite big. It's not a small knife.
No, it's not a small knife at all. This could do some damage.
Definitely.
And I love the fact that there's the center shield boss, because obviously playing a shield maiden, we work with those all the time. Shield wall!
They were brothers in arms. They fought together. So the companionship and the brotherhood was very much at the core of this.
Or sisterhood.
Or sisterhood, absolutely. But in this burial, there's nothing that indicates that this is a female among the grave goods. This is just male stuff, all of it.
No detailed study of the skeleton was made when the grave was excavated a century ago. So any conclusions are drawn from the objects, not the human remains.
This person, archaeologically, is a man.
Why would you think it would be a man?
Probably because we make the assumption that all these weapons and the fact that this is a warrior, we interpret that as being a man, which is our modern point of view.
I don't think we should then leap to the conclusion that if it's got weapons, so it must be a man.
Osteologist Anna Kjellström studies Viking bones for a living.
Hi, I'm Catherine.
She is re-examining the skeleton in the Birka warrior grave and coming up with surprising results.
As you can see, it's rather fragmented. But compared to many other graves at this site, it is actually quite well preserved.
So can you tell me a little bit more how the skeleton was found?
Well, in the main part of the grave, you can see the dead person lying on their side here, surrounded by weapons. This is a very high-status grave. It's an important grave. This is an important person.
So can I just interrupt, because I'm getting really excited here. And you keep saying this person. In terms of the gender, can you tell me a little bit more about what kind of individual this is?
So this is the ilium. This is a part of the left hip bone. What you can see is this part, which is called the great sciatic notch. It's very open. And this is a feature that is more common in female skeletons. And I can compare it to that of a man.
So I see it's definitely a different size.
I can see it in your eyes. You know it already. It is a woman.
Yes! I knew it. A woman was buried with swords, knives, axes, shields, also arrows. So this chick was a badass. Could this be actual proof that shield maidens existed?
I'd say this is definitely a female warrior, someone who made her living on the battlefield. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
I think we can go back to old excavations like this one and reevaluate them. And I think we're going to see female warriors taking their place on the Viking stage in a way that hasn't been possible to identify before.
This is so exciting.
Finally, physical evidence verifies the legend of the Shield Maiden. And in an ancient fortress, another myth emerges.
That's really fascinating.
With the resurrection of a Viking witch. One of the most spectacular sights of the Viking world is the mighty ring fortress at Firkat, Denmark. Deep in the Viking heartlands, it was home to a fantastic discovery that opens a window on another world entirely. The supernatural.
For Vikings, the spiritual was totally integrated into the real. They're people that live sort of partially magical lives. A character like Aslak was going to be someone who wasn't like other women to some extent.
I see things others cannot.
She had the gift.
Actress Alyssa Sutherland has come to Firkat to find out about its magical past. This is her first time at a real Viking site.
It's incredible. I can't believe that I'm actually here. For 4 years, I've been portraying a woman from a time period, and actually being able to come and see something like this makes it so much more real.
Hi, Alyssa.
Hi, Neil.
Welcome to Firkat.
Thank you. I'm very excited.
Yeah, we're standing on the ramparts of a Viking fortress.
Wow. So what would this have looked like back when the Vikings were alive?
So you've got each of these markers is a post. So sort of grow a post back into each of the white dots and roof it over.
Yep.
So you've got 4 buildings on each side. We've got this circular enclosure with 4 gates, and they're exactly at the points of the compass, joined by 2 streets that meet in the middle in a cross. And in each quarter of that circle, there are these courtyards with 1 big hall on each side.
But it's what lay outside of the fortress gates, beyond this rampart, that interests Neil. Archaeologists found a cemetery for the people who once lived here.
And one of the graves is one of the most spectacular women's burials from anywhere in the Viking world.
Today, it is marked by a small mound. But underneath was a large grave containing a woman buried in a wagon, a symbol of status in the Viking Age.
She is buried with the most elaboration of anybody in the cemetery. We know that she's wearing a long dress and lots of golden thread, real gold, woven into it.
Real gold woven into it.
And I think we have to assume that she must have been of similarly high status in life, in the life of the fortress.
Right.
Presumably one of its leading citizens.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's very cool,
I play a royal woman on the show. That's really fascinating, and to think that that's possibly what happened to Aslak.
The picture of a unique and powerful woman is emerging. But it's the extraordinary collection of objects she was buried with that reveal who and what she was in life.
This round thing up here that looks like a box, we call them box brooches. Do you want to hold it?
Sure.
Put your hand underneath it there.
I feel like I'm about to touch an animal that's going to bite me.
That's it.
Okay.
If you bring it down a little and look inside, you see all this gunky white stuff in here. That's the remains of makeup.
Is it?
And it's made of a kind of white lead. Right, this is not something you find on every person. So if you think of this person with a sort of a dead white face and this rather striking, shiny clothes, but she's got lots of little dangly things, little pendants and things, so she'd be clinking as well. It's quite an interesting impression. Also, on her midriff, there is a leather bag that is full of the seeds of a plant called henbane. And there's a lot of folklore and other information about the use of henbane far into the Middle Ages.
Henbane is a highly toxic plant, but it has other special properties. In a lab in Sweden, archaeobotanist Jens Heimdall studies plants from the Viking period and tries to understand how they were used.
There is a lot of use of henbane in history. You can eat it and get rid of pain, and you can smoke it in order to get rid of your toothache. I think the Vikings might have cultivated henbane for medical purposes, but also for magical purposes. Henbane has hallucinogenic compounds within it. So if you take it, you may have hallucinations. I'm putting some henbane seeds on a small iron here in order to try to burn some of them to see if we get some smoke from it.
For the Vikings, there was no boundary between magic and medicine. Jens believes they did smoke henbane because he has found carbonized seeds on Viking sites and in graves.
There's definitely a lot of smoke from here. And if I would take this, perhaps I would get rid of all my pains, both spiritually and physically. The woman at Firkat, she certainly knows about henbane, and it has a magical property for her. Since it's a drug, it's possible to perhaps use it for chemical mysticism in order to get in contact with the world of gods.
Who was this mysterious woman who worked with powerful hallucinogens? The key lies in an extraordinary item buried at her feet. This iron staff is a Viking magic wand.
So you get all the sort of components of a sorceress or a witch coming together. And in the sagas and some of the Old Norse poetry, we read about women with these magic powers. Right. And these women, the name for them is a volva.
Right.
And this obviously is what Aslag is in the series.
You mean you are a vulva?
Serious? I may be.
They say that vulvas practice forbidden sexual rites. Shall I stay awake?
I had read that the magic was at times very sexual and that sex could be included in some of the rituals and the actual magic.
There's speculation, exactly as you said, that the actual act of magic involves sex in some way. These staffs that the Volva use. Yeah. Some of the words for those are actually the same words as for penis.
Right.
And there's a whole group of names of these powerful women that have to do with riding. And there's a sort of sexual overtone to that.
Yeah.
Van helen with ofnu, or housing grana, in eben blytha, ne thick ekyar.
And one of the main functions of these women is to see the future. It's not just seeing what is going to happen to a person. There's a suggestion that they start to shape that future,
Right. I mean, it has to be empowering to have those abilities, to think that you have the ability to do that, and you're quite untouchable in a way.
You question my prophecy, but here's proof of it. In your child's eyes, the serpent my father killed.
These sorceresses, they have a very powerful role in society. So think of them as a combination of a doctor, of an advisor, a counselor, a priest, all kinds of things rolled into one.
This is all such cool stuff. It's like I have actually met Aslag.
Conjured out of the dark past, a formidable sorceress and a battle-ready shield maiden. But these are not the only powers wielded by Viking women.
Among the many different courses that women's lives could take in the Viking Age, some of the more unusual include shield maidens, female sorcerers, and, of course, at the higher end of the social scale, the Lady of the Hall.
Lagatha, you're most welcome. Please stay.
Actress Alyssa Sutherland is in Firkat, Denmark, with archaeologist Charlotte Hedenstejerne Janssen, where a reconstructed Great Hall stands on a site occupied by the Vikings in the 10th century.
This is just like our Great Hall on the show.
So you feel quite at home.
Yes, it's like Aslag's home. I mean, that's where so many of my scenes happen, is in the Great Hall. So what can you tell me about the Lady of the Hall?
Generally, we tend to think of her as the wife of the chieftain, and I think she's so much more. She was actually a political force within the communities. She wanted to keep the balance of society. That was very important. And balance could be kept by being on the same level as your allies. It's a terrible thing to say, but almost like a puppeteer.
That's how I've actually always seen my character. Yeah. I've always liked being able to play somebody that kind of had the guts to do those things and pull the strings.
By insulting and humiliating me, he insulted and humiliated you. My father never would have allowed such a thing. He would have been revenged.
One of my favorite scenes for Alsog was she had a meeting of the Thing and actually sort of got to lead the people and really make decisions.
Who is this young man?
The Thing was the governing assembly traditionally overseen by local male leaders. But being Vikings, these men were often away from home on raids.
I would love to know about what the Lady of the Hall's role was then once the men were away.
She was in charge, of course.
Right.
She was the one who everybody relied on to keep everyday life going.
Yeah.
She became like a male in her role.
Right.
And
quite a lot of responsibility.
Yes, yes.
When the male elite were away, Viking society still had to function. And the natural leaders were often those who'd been pulling the strings all along. The women.
Is it not true?
One of the most compelling pieces of evidence for Viking women of influence came to light in a stunning discovery a century ago in a farmer's field near Tonsberg, Norway.
Now I'm going to show you something really fantastic. This is the most well-preserved Viking ship in the world. About 95% of it is original.
It's amazing. Yeah.
And that is because it was not found as a wreck on the seafloor, but as a grave ship. So a huge mound had been built over the entire ship.
Dating to 834 AD, this is the richest Viking Age burial ever found. Moist clay had sealed and preserved hundreds of objects inside, including a magnificent wagon and 4 sleds, all elaborately carved with interwoven patterns and Viking faces. And at the center of the ship, archaeologists discovered a large oak burial chamber.
So inside this burial chamber were the remains of 2 women.
2 women, that's quite unusual in a ship burial.
Well, I think when we're talking about these big ship burials, it is unique.
This is the only large ship burial dedicated to women. The fragmentary skeletons provide clues to their identities. The first, an old woman, 80 years old when she died, her bones worn, suggesting a life of labor, and a younger woman, about 40 years old.
Unfortunately, very little which is left of her.
But according to Jan, you can tell a lot about a Viking woman from her teeth.
What I really wanted to show you here is what you see down here, this abrasion. That is something that we find on several of her teeth, and it is not a natural phenomenon.
No?
No. It seems to be caused by the use of some kind of metal tooth picker.
That would be a very refined habit. That's not everyday. I've actually never heard of it before.
No, I think this is a quite special thing. This is the lifestyle of an aristocrat.
Jan believes that this younger woman is the focus of the impressive burial.
She's clearly a very important person, of course, but do you have any idea of who she might have been?
I think that in order to understand that, we need to consider what the ship burial rite was about.
Ship burials were important monuments of dynastic power, reserved only for a select few. And they had a mythological origin.
Put the body on the bench. Let's make our offerings.
Vikings buried in ships claimed ancestry back to the gods themselves.
This is a mythical creation of a royal dynasty that we are witnessing here. We should think of her as a queen.
So we're actually looking at the very highest level, or even the very top of Viking Age women at the time.
I think that you couldn't get much higher in Scandinavia.
A grand burial fit for a queen, surrounded by her most valuable possessions for the next world, which explains the presence of a second body. Part of a chilling Viking custom that researchers are still unraveling today.
Master, can I help you?
We shouldn't see this image of an empowered Viking woman as something that saturates all of society, because it certainly does not. There are a great many women who are living in the most desperate of circumstances as slaves.
It's one of the things that's been most difficult since I've been trying to humanize Vikings. There's no getting away from the fact that they were slave-owning, and they sold slaves.
Historians have estimated that up to an astonishing 40% of Viking society was enslaved. For archaeologist Anna Kjellström, slaves are almost untraceable. But historian Stefan Brink has another way to find them. This time-worn 13th century manuscript contains a series of laws written several hundred years after the Viking period, just before slavery was finally abandoned in Scandinavia.
We can see that they must mirror an earlier period.
Hidden among these yellowing pages is the truth about what was going on during the Viking Age itself.
So what do we know about the roles of the female slaves in the Viking society?
We have a sentence here. If I read it in Old Swedish, it says, Eigu barn ambut eller fräll tho dem firibo setja, which means if a woman is away from her children and if there are ambut in that household.
An ambut seems to have been a household female slave. And a second type of domestic slave is referred to as a fustra.
A fustra was a slave that was born in the family and brought up in the family.
So he or she were born into slavery.
Born into slavery at that house.
Yeah.
And we can see, according to the laws, that they had a higher value than a ambut.
This invaluable text provides us with a guide to Viking slaves, their complicated hierarchy, and how to become free.
You will only serve me and my household if you choose, as a free person.
In the Viking period, of course, you could get out of slavery. The laws tell the rituals you have to go through to go from an unfree status to a free status.
You are no longer my servant or bonded to me.
But not all slaves achieved freedom. And sometimes, the bond between slave and master lasted beyond life, into death. Archaeologists have found mysterious double burials, with one body violently tied up and beheaded.
It's a part of a very exclusive ritual, obviously, because we do not find so many graves of this type.
Anna believes these graves could be evidence of a dark pagan ritual where slaves were sacrificed and buried with their masters.
It is a difficult thing to understand for us today.
Yeah, it is difficult to understand or to grasp.
The details of these strange rituals would have been lost to history if it wasn't for an extraordinary account written down by an Arab traveler to the Viking lands during the 10th century.
He witnessed a burial of a chieftain, and that burial is described in such a manner that it is possible to identify a burial ritual that is absolutely unique and fascinating.
The eyewitness account is so powerful that writer Michael Hirst dramatized it almost word for word in the Viking series.
I just copied that. I mean, it's so horrible and horrifying.
A female slave offers herself to be sacrificed to accompany her master in the afterlife.
The young woman is intoxicated every day with some alcoholic drink. And she goes into the tents of the other tradesmen who are linked to this chieftain.
What are they doing?
And they have sexual intercourse with her.
Each one of them says to her, "Tell your master I did this out of love for him." Because she will soon be reunited with her master in death, and she will be able to speak to him.
Closer to the actual killing, they have this door frame, and they lift this slave girl up so she can look over the door frame. She looks into the next world. And this other slave woman who is older,
Silence.
she's called the Angel of Death. She stabs this young slave girl with a knife. And then she's placed in the boat with the grave goods.
This young woman loyally volunteered to be buried beside her master, accompanying him to the other world. It is believed that for Viking slaves, this was an honor.
Don't sleep with lots of women in Kattegat.
I can do without it for a few days.
Viking men are famous for many things.
That's another way of saying you love me.
Not least their virility. But is this real or romanticized? And what of the women? What do we know about the private lives of Vikings?
I'm looking at a small gold foil with the imprint of a couple. So two persons embracing. It looks like they're kissing, and these are usually found in great buildings.
Researchers have been trying to decode these tiny pieces of art for years.
We don't really know how they were used, but if we look at the motif, this to me says something about fertility, probably, some kind of twosome of some sort.
So what did it mean to be part of a Viking couple?
There is definitely such a thing as a marriage. The Norse word for husband is husbond, so that is probably where the word husband comes from. And you will meet it on the runestones.
Charlotte is heading north of Stockholm to Upland. We're on the side of a country road. Viking voices are set in stone. At the end of the 10th century, Vikings began to erect monuments with inscriptions called runes to commemorate the dead. Over 90% of rune stones are raised by men. But stones like this give us the rare opportunity to hear from a Viking woman.
This is the rune stone mentioning a very, very famous Viking Age lady called Estrid. You always start reading it by the head of the dragon. So you start with the head. This is his nose. This is his eye. So Estridr Lit, which is let, raise stones these in memory of Eystein, her husband.
In total, there are 6 stones that mention Estrid, and together they read like a real-life 1,000-year-old soap opera.
She starts out young. She's from an important family. She marries into the first important family on another estate close by. And when she becomes a widow and remarries, she enters into yet another important family with yet another big estate. I think most of the marriages in the Viking Age would have been symbols of alliances between families and to gain both power and wealth.
Marriage was a Viking institution, but their rules were unconventional.
It's clear that although the nuclear family is the kind of social ideal, there are relationships outside marriage with a greater or lesser degree of social acceptance.
I see no reason why you two should not get on together. I have heard that similar arrangements exist all over this country. That an elf can live with more than one woman.
It's true. I know of many such instances.
If we look at the Arab texts from the Viking Age, many of them mention multiple women associated with individual men.
Contrary to most other societies at the time, Charlotte believes that some Viking women had a way out of marriage.
They had a certain amount, at least, of autonomy. And if you look at the Icelandic source or the Norse sagas, when they mention women, there was a possibility, at least in the highest levels of society, to divorce.
I have no choice but to leave you and divorce you.
Divorce isn't documented on the runestones, but they do provide surprising clues about inheritance and what women were entitled to in a marriage.
The structure of the Viking Age inheritance is probably quite unique. What you bring into a marriage is yours. So when you leave a marriage, you take what was yours with you.
Come on.
It is somewhat of a Viking prenuptial. And it was a possibility for a woman to become very self-sufficient in a way.
Divorce may seem progressive for a pre-modern society, but some believe that many Viking women were forced into polygamous relationships.
The institution of concubinage is very clearly present in the law codes dating to the very end of the Viking Age.
I have a problem. 2 women. Both claim to be carrying my child.
Why don't you marry both of them? You take one as a wife, the other as a concubine.
I think we have to be clear, this is effectively a deeply institutionalized misogyny. It's a nasty system by which men monopolize the lives of women and claim power over them.
Neil believes that this monopolization of multiple women by a small number of men could have dramatically unbalanced the gender ratio in the Viking homelands.
A really very large number of men, we're talking 10, 20, 30% of the male population, do not have the possibility to form relationships with women.
And this excess of single men may have directly contributed to what made the Vikings, Vikings.
One of the possibilities that is currently under debate in Viking scholarship is that Scandinavian men are going abroad, acquiring portable wealth, looting and raiding, and therefore coming back and able to improve their status in the marriage market.
Victims of their own chauvinism, the Vikings struck out to sea, and the ships they sailed in held a surprising secret. Women fulfilled many roles in Viking society, but regardless of status, they all shared one skill in common.
One of the main tasks that would fill days on end for women, and especially the ordinary women, people living on farms, would have been textile production.
It may seem like a menial task, but without the work of these women, history might not have been the same. Charlotte is visiting a center for historical and archaeological research in Lyra, Denmark, to find out more about Viking textiles. She's starting with the basics.
Now we're going to be shearing a sheep, a Viking sheep.
A Viking sheep.
The traditional way with the hand
Yeah.
shears. So what you do is that you put the shears down so you can actually feel the sheep's body against it.
Okay.
And just shear your way through.
So do you think this was men's or women's work in the Viking Age?
I'm pretty sure that it would probably be the woman's job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because all the finds we have of these, like the shears, they're almost always found in female graves. So there's a link between handling wool and women. You're free to go. Yay.
So that's about enough for a sock. No.
Well, it will be a very nice sock, I think.
It took wool from one entire sheep to weave a Viking sock. So imagine how much wool was needed to create the sails that powered their ships. Sail-making tools have been found in Viking graves, but archaeologist Eva Anderson Strand believes that too much emphasis is placed on the tools buried with men.
And what is interesting is that those male graves, they have been discussed as the men organizing the sail production.
Yeah.
But there are so many more women
yeah.
burials with the same types of tools and more tools. I really think that women played an important part of this sail production to produce the sail fabric.
Eva and her researchers reproduced these Viking Age tools for hands-on investigation into textile production.
You secure the top of the spindle to the wool, and then you twirl it like this, and then that way it becomes a yarn. By working with this, I learned how time-consuming textile production is.
Eva has calculated that for one person to produce one square sail, it would take just over 4 years. It has been estimated that the largest Viking fleet required 1 million square meters of sailcloth, or 50,000 years of female labor.
Women were involved in all the specialized textile production, but do you think they were also involved in organizing it, organizing the whole industry?
I would absolutely like to think so. The whole production change from the fiber to the finished product, I would consider the women in charge.
If Eva is right, then it was a female-led industry that propelled the Viking raiders out of Scandinavia and into the history books. A different picture emerges from a warrior culture traditionally defined by its masculinity.
The whole debate about the role of women in Viking society, there's this assumption of male control. It's a very androcentric view of Viking women. So I think we need to get away from that.
A woman will one day rule in Kattegat.
Will it be me?
Women could rule and express themselves on their own property and divorce. And it's wonderful to think that that's happening in a Viking society.
All over the Viking world, researchers are drawing women out of the dark past, giving them voices in their own right.
We find them in the graves, we find them on the runestones. The picture that I get from that is that Viking Age society allowed for very, very strong women.
I think that's pretty awesome that women were really significant members of society. I think that's pretty unusual, especially for the time period.
You realize how strong women were, so it's really amazing just to see that they were celebrated.
Even though it was limited, it was accepted, and it was even admired to be a strong woman.
When Michael Hirst began writing the historical drama Vikings, he looked to the Vikings' own sagas for inspiration. And his main character.
I was looking for a hero, and I wanted a thoughtful Viking. Ragnar believed that he was descended from the god Odin, who was also the god of curiosity. That's why he travels. That's why he goes to distant lands.
According to legend, Ragnar Lothbrok is not just a Scandinavian king. He is the greatest warrior of his time. And everyone knows his name. It is said his fame is eclipsed only by that of his sons.
The list of Ragnar's sons grows longer as the legend develops. At the core of the group, we have characters such as Ivar and Björn, who later acquire their nicknames, Ironside and the Boneless. But there are also other prominent Vikings among them. Ubba, Hvitserk, Sigurd Snake in the Eye.
So what in the historical record supports this legend?
Trying to find the real Ragnar is always a remarkably difficult job. There does appear to be a historical Ragnar. The problem with him is he's an incredibly shadowy character. He's sort of standing on the very edges of history.
In the 9th century, Frankish monks writing about the Vikings' sack of Paris in 845 identified a man called Ragnar as their leader.
He's recorded in chronicles that literally just mention his arrival and then usually his death. He's a man who's killed many times. It may be that they're referring to different people, we're not quite sure, but it looks like there is a character who all of these Christian chroniclers would love to be dead because he is, to them, he's a devilish, monstrous character.
To the Vikings, Ragnar is a hero, and his reputation grows.
Fame was very important to Vikings. It meant being famous for doing something quite extraordinary, which would help to propel Ragnar to attack Paris, because it was supposed to be impregnable. That's the kind of fame that Vikings wanted, that allowed them to get a green card into Valhalla.
Ragnar's fame spreads by word of mouth throughout the Viking homelands, to places as far-flung as this Viking colony in the North Atlantic, Iceland. Actor Clive Standen, who plays Rollo on Vikings, has come to meet with Icelandic literary scholar Atlhætr Gudmundsdóttir, an expert on Norse legends known as the sagas.
This climate is so harsh and unforgiving that if I was to put myself back and imagine I was a Viking living here, what would I do with my day?
They, of course, entertain each other inside the farms by telling stories.
This is where the sagas were born.
Yeah.
Now it actually seems really quite exciting.
Yeah.
To sit in a farmstead and just tell stories.
Must have been rather cozy.
What makes a really good saga?
We would need one hero who shows that he can protect the society, kill the dragon, or fight the enemy.
They're the Superman and the Batman of earlier times, in many ways. And they're role models.
Literally idols.
Absolutely.
And when you live on the margins most of the time, then you've always got to think that things can get better. And if you've got your idols in your stories, then you can at least just forget yourself and escape and think that this is something that I can be.
You need to be brave, like the heroes.
There are so many sagas that mention Ragnar Lothbrok. It's almost like that's what the people wanted. The people wanted to hear another story about Ragnar. Or do you think these sagas originated from real stories?
I think that all of the heroic sagas originally began with heroic deeds. And then people told tale about such deeds. And the tale became bigger and more.
Exaggerated.
Yeah.
I think we as a race, we have a tendency to exaggerate anyway. I mean, if you told me a story when I told my friends how it would get bigger.
Exactly, yeah.
It's clear that the stories of Ragnar, the tales of his fame, must have been in circulation orally for a very long time in Scandinavia, because as soon as we get to the first written sources, there he is, fully formed in the Viking imagination.
Ragnar! 3 centuries after Ragnar's time, Scandinavians finally develop a written text and record the sagas.
They're written down in Iceland by Christians, looking back to their Viking pagan past. The major question is, are they a kind of medieval historical fiction, or do they preserve an echo of a Viking Age reality?
At the Royal Library in Copenhagen, Denmark, there is a priceless manuscript from the year 1400. It is the only complete copy of the saga of Ragnar Lothbrok and his sons that survives today. Archaeologist Neil Price and Atlheiður Gudmundsdóttir have come to see the book for the first time.
It's obviously been very, very well used.
Here we can see where Ragnar Saga Lothbrokar begins.
In the saga version, Ragnar's exploits become larger than life.
He becomes this sort of mythical ultimate Viking. Wherever you've been, well, Ragnar got there first. This is almost kind of Viking knights in shining armor, if you like, rescuing princesses and defeating monsters and dragons and things like that.
The sons of Ragnar Lothbrok will be spoken of as long as men have tongues to speak.
Then they will have more fame than I, their father.
In the saga, he's disturbed by the growing fame of his sons, and he decides he's going to make one last triumphal raid on England. Against advice, he goes to England with only a very small following. He gets shipwrecked in Northumbria. He's captured by King Aella. And in the end, he is thrown into a pit of snakes. His last words down here, "I shall die laughing."
Yeah.
It's a proper Viking way to
Yeah,
go.
probably what made him, in the end, the ultimate hero.
But of course, this is all fictional. It's supposed to be his dying words. No one's standing there with a notepad. So this is very much the kind of thing that Ragnar's story turned into, a truly invented artifact. Saga stories are memories handed down by word of mouth, certainly enhanced, elaborated upon, changed, but still ultimately built around people who were once real.
Who wants to be king?
Ragnar's story survived through the centuries and now inspires the drama.
What Ragnar would have liked most, the real Ragnar, is to know that we're talking about him all these years later. That is success. The gold was nice, but that, you die and that goes. Fame lasts forever. To a Viking, that is the real motivation.
But Ragnar's exploits and fame would be eclipsed by those of his own sons.
Now Ragnar is dangerously ill. It is true he may die.
The sons of Ragnar Lothbrok would go on, according to the legends, to become even greater Vikings than their fathers.
Nothing can stop us!
Bjorn is an incredibly important character because he is one of the sons of Ragnar who became essentially more famous than their father. He becomes more determined, a little colder, a little more frightening.
By the middle of the 9th century, the insatiable appetite for treasure, fame, and glory is propelling Vikings like Bjorn Ironside past England and Francia into lands touching the Mediterranean Sea. In the year 859, 62 Viking longships bear down on northern Spain. A medieval chronicle called The Deeds of the Normans identifies one of the legendary sons of Ragnar, Bjorn Ironside, as one of the commanders.
This document explicitly first mentions Bjorn as a son of Ragnar. It also gives us his nickname, Bjorn Ironside, so called because he was apparently invulnerable to wounds. He could emerge from a battle without a scratch. He's clearly a very able and very feared Viking commander.
Having spent years plundering in Francia, Bjorn now looks south for new opportunities.
That looks like a road, not the sea. It's my destiny.
Now, Neil Price, searching for evidence of Bjorn's campaign, has come to Galicia on the northern coast of Spain. He is meeting Spanish researcher Irene Garcia at a site that Bjorn himself may have sacked.
Here we are in the Basilica San Martín de Montañedo, which is actually the oldest cathedral in Spain.
This is one of the few places where we have historical documents to link a standing building with recorded Viking attacks.
That is right. This cathedral was such an important place during the Viking Age because it served as refuge from all the people that were attacked by Vikings, and it also became the attack itself.
After sacking the basilica, Bjorn's forces target monasteries up and down the coast for several months. Now, a remarkable discovery on the shores of Galicia could be evidence that a Viking fleet like Bjorn's anchored here.
So this has just was the shore?
We think it's not an anchor. It's really heavy.
What we have here is a huge stone anchor that would have had a wooden spike in the middle and then attached to a rope.
4 anchors have washed ashore in recent storms, as well as these stones believed to be ballast from ships. Are they proof that Viking ships landed here?
This is the stuff that's in the hulls of the ships to keep them stable.
Correct.
And if they're offloading ballast here, it means they're taking on something else.
Exactly.
Cargo of some kind.
The ballast is a type of stone not found in Galicia, flint.
The area of Galicia, all of Galicia, is empty of flint. There's a very small quantity in the inland, but the amount of flint that has come ashore, it has to come from either Normandy or southern England.
Garcia's theory is that Viking raiders filled their ships with the flint and then replaced it with loot seized in Galicia. In contrast, the anchor stone is made of rock found nearby.
This is local stone, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It's a type of stone that is actually only in this beach.
The local inhabitants had only small fishing vessels and would never have used anchors this big.
This is a big ship.
It's a big ship.
It's a really big ship. The fact that the anchors would have been produced by the Vikings on site also brings this idea that they were on site for a certain amount of time. And that links to other things around this beach, like the potential existence of a Viking camp.
We know this is a
Vikings are known to build fortified camps when raiding in foreign lands for long periods. Since Bjorn's fleet was in Galicia for up to a year, he would have needed a temporary camp too.
When I first came here and looked at the place, the locals thought it was a motte and bailey.
So a fortification on a mound.
Vikings built fortifications on seashores or rivers to protect themselves and their ships from attack.
It is a D-shaped structure facing the sea, protecting the harbor, with a ditch and a rampart, and then an inner rampart as well. And what it looked like was more similar to the Viking camps in Ireland and in England than to a motte.
This is overlooking the harbor, and if you're sitting up here, you can keep your eye on what's going down by the water.
Yes, the worry was the harbor.
So this is the protection place. This is where they keep the boats.
With a Viking camp established on the coast, Galicia is now exposed to further attack. And Bjorn can set his sights on one of the richest cities in all of Europe, Santiago de Compostela. In the year 859, Vikings led by Bjorn Ironside are ravaging the coast of Galicia, part of modern-day Spain. According to historical sources, Bjorn targets the Galician city of Santiago de Compostela. It's a holy city, full of treasure. A place where pilgrims from all over the Christian world come.
Those pilgrims brought offerings to the shrine. They brought wealth, portable loot that was very attractive indeed for the Vikings.
But as Bjorn's forces sail around the coast towards Santiago, they discover a new, more clever and formidable enemy.
What is different about the Viking incursions into Spain is the nature of the resistance they meet, which is much more intense, much more coordinated, and much more effective than what they were used to.
The Spanish archaeologists bring Price to see an amazing sight that was only discovered when a pilot noticed some curious formations on top of this hill. The formations turned out to be the walls of a massive hilltop fortress.
So this is the stone road of the last entrance of the fortress.
It's really well built.
Yes, it's built, and this is the key, this stone.
Oh.
If you look at it, this is a wheel track.
So this has actually been shaped, hasn't it?
Yes.
So they're coming up here in wagons and carts and things?
Yes.
Once Bjorn and his ships round the nearby cape, it will take them only 12 hours to reach land.
The moment the sails round that cape, you don't have very long to get all your belongings, all the things that are most important to you, load them on your carts or just carry them on your back.
This is the main entrance, and this is the wall, 2 meters wide. They protect themselves in this area against Vikings.
And it's so big. You can see how you could put all the communities from down in the coast up here with their belongings, their animals.
So what do we do for water up here?
There was, in this side, there was a spring.
Okay, so there's a natural water source up on the top here.
Yes, the place is very, very well chosen.
The excavation also unearthed the foundations of a fortified watchtower, a critical part of the fortress defense.
How tall was this?
Our architect estimates an altitude of 3.5 meters. So it was very tall building.
Yes.
And the really key thing for our interest is the date.
Yes, we dated it in around end of 8th century and the 9th century.
That means the watchtower is in operation when Bjorn's fleet approaches the Galician coast.
Wow.
Look at that.
It's
This
amazing.
is the best place to understand why they choose this site.
Wow.
You could imagine how absolutely terrifying it would be to be looking at Finisterre and see all the ships coming to you.
100 ships coming.
Yeah.
With all the levels of walls, it must have looked quite impressive from the bottom as well.
The Vikings have to make a decision if they want to attack this place. They are going to be in a very hostile environment.
It's an exercise in, is it worth it?
Yes.
To try and get past this.
The historical records are silent about the fate of this fortress during Bjorn's campaign of 859. But his fleet must have passed this point of land in order to reach the Ria de Arosa, the waterway that leads to Santiago. And that's where Garcia and Gago take Price next.
We're just coming into the harbor area now.
Yes, we are in a very special place because it's a link between the inside Galicia and the beginning of the sea.
This is the absolute gateway to Santiago, isn't it? When the Viking fleets are coming in, and we've got descriptions of, more than 100 ships, so clogging this river, and you could imagine this little harbor here full of those ships. This is the best place to have them, isn't it?
This was a so important place that the bishops in the Middle Ages called it the key and seal of the Galician kingdom.
This is the gateway through which the 859 raid passes.
This is the gateway to the wealth.
Historical sources say that Bjorn's forces continue their campaign up the river, sacking monasteries as they go. When they finally reach Santiago de Compostela, they fight the Galician forces to a standstill. But instead of sacking the city, they exact a tribute payment to go away.
When the big raid of 859 is coming through here, the raid that may have been led by Bjorn Ironside, there are no defenses here, and it's because of that vulnerability that really gave rise to the place we are now.
In the decades after Bjorn's raid, a castle was built to fortify the river. Bjorn's legacy in stone lasts to this day. And this is just the beginning of his expedition. He sails south, plunders Morocco, and then enters the Mediterranean, sacking sites in France, Italy, and maybe even Egypt over the next 3 years. It is the most ambitious Viking raid in history, and it transforms Bjorn Ironside into a folk hero.
We should all be proud of what we have achieved. But who is...
According to some legends, he is the founder of a dynasty of Swedish kings that would last 10 generations. But those same legends tell of a Viking leader even more fearsome than Bjorn. Bjorn's brother, Ivar the Boneless. In the year 869, the Vikings are again ravaging the British Isles. And they fill their ships with plundered loot and slaves. But now, all the independent bands of raiders have coalesced into a single terrifying force.
They're different to that early generation of raider. They're not turning up, setting fire to things, getting the money and running away again. They are an army of occupation. They appear to be here to stay.
According to the Anglo-Saxon Chronicles, it is called the Great Heathen Army, and its commander is Ivar, a Viking already famous for conquering parts of Ireland in the 850s. The sagas, written down centuries later, claim Ivar is yet another son of Ragnar. They describe him as the handsomest of all men, and so wise, there may have been none wiser. But there's also a dark side.
All our sources about Ivar emphasize his cruelty and his tyranny. He's called the king of all the Northmen in Britain and Ireland. And this, to me, suggests that Ivar must have been an incredibly charismatic and powerful figure, that he could draw the allegiance of Viking groups across such a wide geographical area in this period.
But to his Christian victims, he is something else.
Ivar is the epitome of pagan cruelty. He's the ultimate bad guy in stories of the Vikings.
That view of Ivar is forcefully portrayed in this priceless 12th century manuscript describing the great heathen army's execution of an Anglo-Saxon king named Edmund.
Edmund is captured by the Vikings. And what we see represented visually in this manuscript is the torturing of King Edmund to try and make him renounce his Christian faith. So first he's stripped and whipped by the Viking army. This doesn't affect Edmund. He calls out to God and to hold on to his faith. So then Ivar instructs his army to shoot Edmund with arrows. When Ivar is said to realize that Edmund will undergo any torture for his beliefs, the king is then beheaded. So this really sets up Ivar as this kind of arch-villain.
His name is Ivar.
In the drama series, Ivar is born with a disability.
Ivar the Boneless.
But it's not until 400 years after he dies that his nickname, the Boneless, first appears in legendary accounts.
There's been lots of speculation as to what this nickname really means. Anything from being very tough.
He's Viking.
Someone who didn't get tired.
You are soft.
Or is it some kind of physical condition? We don't know.
We have a Latin word exosus, which means despicable, which is very like the word exos, which means boneless. If somebody hadn't very good Latin and they read about the despicable Ivar, they might read that as the boneless Ivar, and then that would stick as a name for later times.
Historian Claire Downham is one of the world's foremost experts on Ivar the Boneless. She has spent her career trying to separate the facts about Ivar from his legend. According to Irish and English historical sources, a great battle between the forces of Ivar and an army of Britons occurred here, Dumbarton Rock, in what is now Scotland.
Can you tell us why this site is important?
Well, as you can see, Claire, we're standing on top of a huge volcanic plug here, a big basalt rock, and it overlooks the River Clyde. And it's a tremendously important strategic spot because it guards the waterways from the sea right up into Glasgow.
In the 9th century, Dumbarton controls the southwestern part of Scotland and entry to the Irish Sea. And Ivar wants to add Scotland to his bounty of already conquered lands in northern England and Ireland.
So what would have been on this site in the Dark Ages?
This was a site where kings lived and governed from.
Can you take us back to 870? What do you think happened up here?
Well, I think from standing where we are, you can look out over the Clyde and imagine a number of ships heading in from the sea and maybe beaching down below us.
Historical documents from Ireland tell of Ivar leading 200 Viking ships here after conquering northern England.
It must have been quite an amazing sight to have, like, this whole flotilla of Viking ships around here.
Yes, looking straight down on it, it would have been quite a scary sight, wouldn't it? Although it's a sheer drop down here, so there's still a fair bit of besieging to do from down there.
Yeah. And even though the Vikings have such a reputation as warriors, I imagine still coming to this site must have been quite intimidating.
Indeed, yes, yes. After a long voyage, you know, suddenly you've got action straight away.
Ivar's initial attacks fail to breach the walls, but the Vikings settle in. Weeks turn into months.
So the point of maintaining a siege of this place would be to make sure that no supplies could come by land or sea, so presumably they must have had ships moored around the edge of this circumference.
They surrounded it, and then the inhabitants inside, as you say, couldn't resupply themselves and would have had to just rely on what they had inside the site.
4 months in, the Vikings finally break through the walls and overwhelm the defenders. Ivar now has clear sailing into the Irish Sea and his kingdom back in Ireland.
They're said to take 200 ships of booty with them back to Ireland, which is an incredible fleet size in medieval standards. A lot of this booty seems to be human slaves.
Slaves were not just a part of Viking society, they were present in all the societies of northwestern Europe, even among the Christians. The Vikings were an absolutely integral part, indeed leaders, of the slave trade itself. Ivar is absolutely a player in this process. In the sources that describe his adventures, we see how he makes massive slave raiding expeditions against Scotland and then taking those slaves to sell in Ireland.
Evidence of the Vikings' role in the slave trade has been found along Ivar's route to Ireland on the Isle of Inchmarnock. 1,000 years ago, someone used a piece of slate to create a chilling image of Viking atrocity.
This is the hostage stone. And as you can see, it depicts a central figure here of someone with very scary hair. And he's leading a figure off towards
a Viking longship.
Yes, indeed. There's its oars coming down.
So it looks like this guy here, the non-warrior, looks like he's holding something. Do you think that's like a book satchel or a reliquary? Or
it could be. That it's been interpreted as these house-shaped reliquaries. It's showing that he was a monk. He was showing his religious
attributes.
Yes.
Yeah. It could suggest an eyewitness account of what Vikings are up to in this area. Vikings aren't just coming from nowhere, raiding and then disappearing. They're taking hostages. Negotiations are happening. Money is being paid over to release people who've been kidnapped. So it's quite tempting to link the images we have on the hostage stone with the activities of Ivar in North Britain, in particular the siege and sack of Dumbarton Rock, which took place in 870. And in 871, they went back to Ireland, but took 200 ships of slaves with them.
The hostage stone represents little more than a fleeting recollection of Viking brutality. But in a different part of Britain, a startling series of finds is rewriting the grisly history of the Great Heathen Army. In the 870s, Ivar has taken part of the Great Heathen Army to plunder Ireland, but the remainder continues to ravage Anglo-Saxon England. It occupies Mercia in 873 and spends the winter preparing for more battles at a town called Repton. 1,100 years later, British archaeologists excavating at Repton's Church of St. Wistons discover the exact location of the Great Heathen Army's winter camp.
This is actually 8th and 9th century Anglo-Saxon masonry.
Vikings creator Michael Hurst has come to Repton to learn about the camp from Mark Horton, the archaeologist who supervised the dig 30 years ago.
The idea was that they used the church as part of a great Viking fortress, and they put this earthwork between here and the Trent, creating this D-shaped enclosure in which the Viking army was encamped.
And if you think about it, you're staying in hostile territory for months. What better way to do that than to turn up where the king or the monks or whoever has got all the food in for the winter, and you turn up and say, thanks, off you go, we'll have that.
On the other side of the churchyard, archaeologists unearth the remains of a stone building with something gruesome inside.
When we actually came to open up this building, in the eastern room was stacked huge quantities of human bones, human remains. It was kind of the most macabre scene as we stacked them and washed them on the grass here.
They count the remains of 264 individuals. Coins found inside date the grave to the year of the Viking occupation of 873. Are these the dead of the Great Heathen Army? Or are they the remains of their Anglo-Saxon victims? 30 years after their discovery, archaeologist Kat Jarman is using new scientific techniques to get to the bottom of the mystery.
These are from the mass grave.
Yeah, so all these skulls and the jaws here are some of the remains.
Teeth are analyzed to determine the origins of the dead.
When you're a child and your teeth are forming and the enamel is forming, that's taking up chemical signatures from the food that you eat as a child. So that signal in your tooth is preserved for the rest of your life.
This is incredible.
Yes, it is,
You can
isn't
tell
it?
the difference between different Scandinavian countries and even regions. And
You can definitely tell, you know, if somebody's from Denmark as opposed to inland Norway. What the evidence from the mass grave is showing is that these are actually not all individuals from one place. They're certainly not local, but they're very diverse. So they're coming from all over the
different
place.
parts of Scandinavia. So we can say with some certainty that these are Vikings
Absolutely, I would say so.
involved in the Great Heathen Army with Ivar the Boneless.
Yes, most likely.
But the bones show few traces of battle injuries. So how did they die? The next discovery may be a clue.
There's one find that's not been really fully reported that's so gruesome it could be in one of your new scripts just
Very
over
good.
here.
Okay, let's go and see.
Just about here, we found a burial with 4 individuals, juvenile individuals, ranging in age from about 6 to around 17 or 18. And they were buried together in a single grave, so it suggests that it was a simultaneous event. And in with them was a sheep's jaw, which again is a very Scandinavian thing to do. Now, these 4 individuals could have died and been put together in the grave at the same time, but the most likely explanation is that is a sacrificial grave.
What motivated the Vikings to sacrifice children?
One explanation might be that the Viking camp, the army, was struck by disease. Perhaps plague, something similar, killing large numbers of Vikings at more or less the same time, that could result in the mass grave found by the archaeologists.
Did the Vikings sacrifice children to appease their gods and stop the plague?
There's a lot of mystery around this grave.
There really is, yeah, absolutely. But we don't actually have any evidence on their bones for how they died.
If their throats had been cut, you wouldn't be able to tell from the bones. No.
Precisely. Yeah, so there's probably an incredible story behind these 4 children that we've not yet come to the bottom of, but maybe we will.
Right next to the church, yet another shocking find that may reveal Ivar's ultimate fate. After Ivar returns to Ireland in 871, he disappears from the Irish and Anglo-Saxon historical records until 873, when reports of his death surface. But how and where he dies are a mystery. The solution to that mystery may lie at a third grave uncovered at Repton, where the great army camped at the time of Ivar's death.
What you're standing on is the site of an excavated Viking warrior grave. An incredible discovery where we have this very big-boned individual. He was furnished with a Viking sword alongside.
Who could this warrior be?
There's a possibility that there was one Viking war leader, king, called Ivar the Boneless, whose death we don't know precisely, but in one of the Irish annals said died with the Viking army, a horrible death in 873, which of course would bring him here to Repton. So maybe he is the guy who's buried in there.
One of the sons of Ragnar Lothbrok?
That's right, Ivar the Boneless.
Yeah.
These all come from one grave. This is the warrior's grave next to the church.
Gareth Williams and Michael Hurst examine the objects buried with the warrior.
You can feel something of the weight of a Viking sword.
Wow, this is very cool. Holding a Viking sword. It's incredible to think that one of the last people to hold this would have been the Viking who placed it in the grave. It's so cool.
Only Vikings of wealth were buried with their swords.
The other thing we can see about him is something about his beliefs, because here we have this Thor's hammer worn around his neck. It's a pretty clear statement of religious beliefs.
The warrior is a pagan, just like Ivar.
Ivar is the archetypal, resolute pagan who does not want to convert to Christianity, but he also wants to torture Christians.
So how was the warrior killed? Examination of his bones reveal his skull is pierced twice with a spear. His arm is nearly hacked off, and a heavy axe delivers the final blow.
Now, there's one other really interesting find in this grave, and that's a boar's tusk. The person in this grave was almost certainly killed by a substantial blow to his upper thigh. Yes, so he would have been severed there. Yeah. The leg is still there in the grave, but the boar's tusk may be a replacement of something else.
Okay.
In a final act of indignity, the killers cut off his genitals. It's clearly overkill, perhaps meted out by Anglo-Saxons seeking revenge on their sworn enemy.
So we have somebody clearly high status, killed in a very severe way.
And almost ritualized, you know.
Absolutely. I mean, this is
cutting off his phallus and you know, making a big statement about that.
Yeah, I think there's evidence that somebody really hated him very much to kill him the way that they did. So he was clearly somebody important, known both by the enemies and by whoever buried him. And so I have my own ideas about who this might be. If Ivar the Boneless was buried in Repton, I wonder if maybe this is him. I mean, this is clearly a leader. He's clearly coming from the right area, dating to the right period. It was somebody who was probably hated by the enemies and given a very, very important grave.
That's amazing. I hope it is him.
Yes, it would be good, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Cat Jarman may never prove without a doubt that this is Ivar. So much about him remains a mystery. In our quest to understand the Vikings, we may never know for sure where history ends and the legend begins.
putting together the lives of individual Vikings is mixing, inevitably, legend and fact.
And there's so much we don't know. We have to piece together the evidence, and to some extent, there will be times when you, writing fiction, will be guessing no more than historians and archaeologists.
Oh, yes, but of course it's good for me. It's not so good for you, because I can make stuff up, you know, and you can't.
Michael, we are scientists, you know, and what is there is highly significant.
Yeah.
A Viking leader is buried in this prominent place, and if you think it's Ivar, that's fine by me.
In the sagas and legends, Ragnar's sons eclipse him in fame. They're remembered for centuries as, effectively, the ultimate Vikings. If we go back to the people behind the legend, whether or not they were actually brothers, whether or not they were actually the sons of a man called Ragnar, as historical figures, they were clearly major, major players that shaped the future destiny of Europe so violently during the time of the Viking campaigns.
If you enjoyed this documentary, head to SBS On Demand anytime for over 250 documentaries to keep you informed.